The nebula stretched out before the Odyssey like a vast ocean of swirling, luminous clouds. Its vibrant colors, deep blues, purples, and streaks of gold, shimmered in the void, a celestial wonder that had captivated humanity for centuries. To Captain Elise Carter, the nebula was breathtaking, but today it felt like more than that. It felt alive. "Elise, the readings are off the charts," Lieutenant Mark Reyes said from his station, his eyes wide as he scanned the data. "We're picking up energy signatures that don't match anything we've seen before." Carter stepped forward, her eyes narrowing at the holographic display. They had been sent to this remote region of space to study the nebula. But this was different. "What kind of energy signatures?" Carter asked. "Structured," Reyes replied. "Too precise to be natural." Carter frowned. The nebula was believed to be a natural phenomenon, but structured energy meant one thing. The nebula wasn't just a beautiful cosmic event. It was something far more complex. "Send out a deep scan probe," Carter ordered. "Let's find out what's going on." As the probe ventured deeper into the nebula, the data streamed back to the Odyssey. The crew gathered around the main console, eyes glued to the display as the probe uncovered something hidden deep within the clouds. A massive structure, pulsing with energy. "Captain, this isn't natural," Reyes said, his voice hushed. "It's a construct." Carter's eyes widened. "Who built it?" Lieutenant Sarah Park, the ship's science officer, examined the strange symbols on the structure. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Captain, these symbols, they're human." The room fell silent. "Impossible," Reyes muttered. "Humanity didn't have spacefaring technology that far back, and yet here it is," Carter said. "An ancient human civilization must have built this, but why?" Before anyone could answer, the ship's alarms blared. The Odyssey's sensors detected an incoming fleet, alien ships, sleek and menacing, emerging from the far side of the nebula. "It's the Zorvans," Reyes said, his voice tight with fear. The Zorvans were ruthless, technologically superior aliens known for conquering and enslaving other species. They had come for the nebula, and they didn't plan on sharing. "They're hailing us," Reyes said. "On screen," Carter ordered. The face of the Zorvan commander appeared, his sharp features twisted into a cruel smile. "Humans," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are trespassing. The nebula belongs to the Zorvan Empire. Surrender it or be destroyed." "This is human technology," Carter replied, standing firm. "It belongs to us." The commander's smile faded. "Very well. Prepare to be annihilated." The view screen went black and the tension in the room grew thick. The Zorvans were ready to attack, and the Odyssey was hopelessly outgunned. "Captain," Park said, "the structure is activating." "Reyes, can we trigger the weapon?" Carter asked. Reyes hesitated. "We don't know what it does, Captain. Activating it could—" "We don't have a choice," Carter interrupted. "If the Zorvans take control of it, they'll use it against us." Reyes and Park exchanged a glance before getting to work. As the Zorvan fleet closed in, the Odyssey moved deeper into the nebula. The ancient structure responded, its systems flaring to life as the humans tapped into its dormant power. "Captain," Park said, her voice trembling, "the weapon is online," and just as the first Zorvan ship fired, the nebula exploded with light. The nebula erupted in a wave of energy, catching the Zorvan fleet off guard. The swirling clouds shifted, forming a massive vortex that pulled ships into its center. The Zorvans, realizing too late that they had stumbled into something far beyond their control, scrambled to retreat. But the weapon wasn't finished. "Captain, the nebula is transforming," Park said, her voice laced with awe and fear. "It's not just a weapon. It's a system of self-replicating nanomachines. They're forming tendrils." The nebula's clouds coalesced into enormous, glowing tendrils of energy, reaching out and wrapping around the Zorvan ships. One by one, the ships were dismantled, their hulls disintegrating as the nanomachines tore them apart. Carter watched in horror and fascination as the weapon consumed the Zorvan fleet. "We've unleashed a force we don't understand." Suddenly, alarms blared across the Odyssey. "Captain," Reyes shouted, "the Zorvans have launched an infiltration team. They're boarding us." Carter's heart raced. "They're trying to take control of the weapon." The Zorvan boarding team had used cloaking technology to slip past the nebula's defenses and land on the Odyssey. Now they were fighting their way through the ship, aiming to seize the control room. Carter drew her sidearm. "Park, stay here and maintain control of the weapon. Reyes, with me. We're going to stop them." The ship's corridors erupted into chaos as the Zorvans clashed with the human crew. Carter and Reyes fought their way through, narrowly avoiding energy blasts as they moved to intercept the alien forces. "They're heading for the control room," Reyes said. "We need to stop them before they get to the weapon's core." As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Zorvan soldiers. The aliens fired, and Carter dove behind cover, returning fire as Reyes moved to flank them. The firefight was intense, the sound of weapons fire echoing through the ship. "We can't let them reach the core," Carter said, gritting her teeth as she fired another shot. "If they gain control of the weapon, we're finished." Meanwhile, in the nebula, the situation grew more dire. The weapon was becoming unstable, its tendrils expanding further into space, threatening nearby planets. Park struggled to maintain control, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to keep the weapon from overloading. "Captain," Park's voice came over the comms, strained and urgent. "The nebula's systems are reaching critical levels. We need to shut it down or it's going to destroy everything." "We're almost there," Carter replied, her breath heavy as she and Reyes pushed forward, cutting through the remaining Zorvan forces. "Just hold on." They reached the core chamber just as the Zorvan commander, flanked by his elite guards, was attempting to breach the final control panel. Carter didn't hesitate. She raised her weapon and fired, taking down one of the guards. The commander turned, his eyes burning with rage. "You cannot stop us," the Zorvan commander hissed. "This weapon will be ours, not if I have anything to say about it." Carter shot back. As the battle raged aboard the Odyssey, the nebula continued to evolve. Its tendrils of energy now stretched across vast distances, reaching towards nearby systems. The nanomachines were no longer just a weapon. They were becoming self-aware, a force of nature that threatened to consume everything in its path. "Captain, the weapon is reaching critical mass," Park warned over the comms. "If we don't shut it down, it could trigger a chain reaction that destroys this entire sector." Carter's mind raced. They had come here to study the nebula, to unlock its secrets, but now, those secrets were threatening to destroy them all. And worse, the Zorvans were still determined to take control. As the Zorvan commander advanced on her, Carter made a desperate decision. "Reyes, get to the control panel. We need to override the system and shut this thing down." Reyes nodded and darted toward the controls, dodging enemy fire as he went. Meanwhile, Carter engaged the Zorvan commander in a fierce hand-to-hand battle. The alien was strong, his movements swift and deadly, but Carter fought with everything she had. "You think you can control this power?" the commander snarled as they struggled. "You humans are nothing but children playing with forces beyond your understanding." "Maybe," Carter grunted as she blocked a blow, "but at least we know when to stop." Reyes reached the control panel and began inputting the shutdown sequence. But the system was complicated, ancient, built by a civilization long lost to time. As he worked, the nebula's energy flared, shaking the entire ship. "Come on," Reyes muttered, his hands moving faster. "We don't have much time." In the control room, Park was frantically trying to stabilize the nebula's systems. The energy readings were off the charts, and the tendrils of nanomachines were expanding faster than she could contain them. "Captain, we're running out of options," Park said, her voice strained. "If we can't shut this down, it's going to destroy everything." Carter, still locked in battle with the Zorvan commander, shouted over her shoulder. "Reyes, how's it going?" "I'm working on it," Reyes replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "This system is ancient. There's no way to know if the shutdown sequence will work in time." The Zorvan commander took advantage of the distraction and landed a brutal punch to Carter's side, sending her crashing into the wall. He advanced, his eyes glowing with malice. "It's over, human." But just as the commander raised his weapon for the killing blow, Carter reached for a hidden knife at her belt. In one swift motion, she drove the blade into the commander's side, causing him to stumble back in pain. "It's not over yet," she growled. The nebula was now a storm of energy, its tendrils expanding across the galaxy. The Zorvan fleet had been decimated, but the remaining ships were still fighting to gain control of the weapon. Inside the Odyssey, chaos reigned as the humans and Zorvans clashed in a desperate battle. Carter, bruised and battered from her fight with the Zorvan commander, joined Reyes at the control panel. "Did you shut it down?" "I'm trying," Reyes said, his voice tight with frustration. "The system isn't responding, it's too unstable. We need to do something or we're all dead," Carter said, her mind racing. "There has to be a way to stop this." Reyes scanned the controls, his eyes narrowing as he noticed something. "Wait, there's a subroutine. It looks like the original builders left a failsafe. Can you activate it?" Carter asked. Reyes hesitated. "I can, but it's risky. It might shut down the nebula, or it might destroy everything." Carter glanced at the chaos outside, the nebula's tendrils tearing apart the Zorvan ships and threatening nearby planets. They were out of time. "Do it." As Reyes activated the failsafe, the nebula's energy began to fluctuate. The tendrils of nanomachines started to retract, pulling back into the nebula's core. But the process was slow, and the system was still unstable. "We did it," Reyes said, his voice filled with relief. "It's shutting down." But before they could celebrate, the Zorvan commander, bleeding but still alive, lunged at the controls. "No!" he roared, slamming his fist into the panel, sending sparks flying. The nebula flared, and the failsafe began to unravel. "He's destabilized the system," Reyes shouted. Carter turned to the Zorvan commander, her eyes filled with fury. "You just doomed us all." The nebula was on the verge of total collapse. The energy flared and pulsed, threatening to tear the Odyssey and the surrounding systems apart. Inside the ship, alarms blared as the crew scrambled to find a way to stop the chain reaction. "We're out of time," Park said over the comms. "If we don't shut this thing down now, it's going to destroy everything." Carter looked at the Zorvan commander, who lay slumped against the wall, defeated. "You could have stopped this." The commander laughed weakly. "It doesn't matter. The nebula will consume you all." But Carter wasn't ready to give up. "Reyes, is there anything we can do?" Reyes, his hands shaking, scanned the controls one last time. "There's one more option. We can divert the remaining energy into a controlled burst. It might stop the chain reaction, but it'll destroy the nebula." "Do it," Carter said. As Reyes input the final commands, the nebula began to collapse inward, its energy being redirected into a massive, controlled burst. The tendrils of nanomachines retracted, and the swirling clouds of gas began to dissipate. The Zorvan fleet, what was left of it, retreated into the far reaches of space. They had lost the battle for the nebula. The Odyssey shook violently as the final burst of energy was released. Carter braced herself, expecting the worst. But then, slowly, the shaking stopped. The nebula had returned to its dormant state. "We did it," Reyes said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's over." Carter let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We stopped it." In the aftermath, the crew of the Odyssey surveyed the damage. The nebula, once a beautiful cosmic wonder, was now a quiet, dormant cloud. The weapon had been deactivated, and humanity had once again survived against impossible odds. But as Carter looked out at the nebula, she couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets had humanity's ancient ancestors left behind, and were they ready for what might come next? For now, they had won, but in the vastness of space, there were always new dangers on the horizon.